With the regular season 3 days away, I wanted to look at the Denver Nuggets and just look at my biggest questions for this team and how I think they're going to perform next year and what their chances of repeating are going to look like. I think the first question that's on my mind and everyone else's is how good is their bench in the regular season, and then how good is that bench in the postseason, because I do really think those are two separate questions and will have separate answers. First, in the regular season, I think it's important to note that this team had the second worst bench in the entire league last year at a negative 3.7 net rating. You, of course, don't need to believe net rating is the be-all, end-all, but even if you just watch the game, you could tell that bench stank. But this team still won 53 games with the second worst bench in the entire league. And honestly, I don't think their bench will be much worse than it was last year. I think this bench actually has a surprisingly high in the sense that maybe -2 is probably what this bench is going to look like. But I think this bench has a really decent floor just because of how much defensive versatility that I think they will be able to play with, especially if they're playing Payne Watson, Zeke Nnaji, and Christian Braun together a lot, because those guys are three very switchable, very good defenders. And if you put a Jamal Murray and maybe a Reggie Jackson out there, or Jamal Murray and Julian Strawther, both of those guys have really good size and provide enough shooting and spacing that I think a Christian Braun can attack into the transition. I think Payne Watson can attack in transition, and that's what this bench unit is going to need to do. They're going to need to force a lot of turnovers, force a lot of on-ball steals, and get out and run for them to score a lot of points, or they're just going to need Jamal Murray to be able to carry this bench unit. And I really think he's shown a lot of improvement, especially on his playmaking. I think everyone thought Jamal Murray was going to come out and average 25, 26 points like he did in the postseason last year. And while that may still happen, I think the main growth that we'll see from Jamal Murray is with his playmaking and his decision making and his ability to quarterback the bench unit, because while he has played a lot of minutes with the bench unit in the past, he's never been able to really keep them afloat and keep them as a positive. And I think this is the year that it changes, just because of his playmaking, his ability to attack from all three levels, get to the line at a decent rate, and just I think the other pieces around him with Christian Braun especially and Julian Strawther with everything he's shown in the preseason, that they can be decent on the offensive end and be really solid defensively. And I think that's good enough for this team to win a bunch of games. And if this bench is much better than it was last year, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they win 58 games just with the way they were able to play last year with such a terrible bench. But when it comes to the postseason, I have such massive question marks about who's their seventh and who's their eighth man, because I don't really think anyone has shown consistently that they can play that. Yes, Reggie Jackson in the past has been able to be really good in the postseason, but I think having another smaller, not great defensive guard in the lineup alongside Jamal Murray isn't that valuable, and actually doesn't really help them too much, because whatever point Reggie Jackson are giving you in the postseason are going to be able to be made up by Jokic, Jamal, MPJ, just the starters playing more minutes. So I really think Reggie Jackson's skill set for this team is kind of irrelevant or redundant in the postseason. I think he can be great in the regular season, but in the postseason, I just don't think they really need the type of scoring and the type of offense that he provides. I think the players who I would hope the most can hit for them, be a really good postseason bench unit, would be a Julian Strawther and a Zeke Nnaji, just because those guys have great size. Zeke not so much, but he's very switchable. I think in a small ball five lineup, he'll be good, especially if Aaron Gordon is backing him up at the 4. I think those two guys would be really good at rebounding defense. They can switch a lot. And Julian Strawther, well, he is a rookie. He just seems like a really polished, high IQ player who hasn't really made any mistakes in the postseason. He's great at playing off the ball, has shown a little bit of off the dribble creation and getting to the rim. He's a really good shooter, and he just plays smart on both ends. Like I already said, he doesn't make mistakes, and that's just more valuable than what Reggie Jackson can do, where he can get really hot for a little bit, but then he can also just make a bunch of mistakes and take a bunch of bad shots. And with Julian Strawther being 6'7", just his defensive versatility, even if he isn't that great, he can still switch. He can still be a help side rim protector in certain situations. He can rebound the ball. And one thing that I think this team was really, really blessed with last year is how big their starting five was, with Jamal Murray being the shortest guy at 6'4", and having a 6'7" shooting guard alongside 6'6" Christian Braun and everyone else they have on this team, just makes them such a big starting 5+ bench that it's going to be hard for teams who go play small with their bench unit to really be able to match them on the glass and just with their physicality. Those are kind of more hopeful scenarios. I don't really think it's that likely Julian Strawther is part of this team's bench rotation in the playoffs, unless he just has a great regular season like Christian Braun did last year. And while I think Zeke Nnaji is who they should look to, it might not be him. I think it might be Justin Holiday and Reggie Jackson. I just don't like those two guys as much as a 6th or as a 7th and 8th man, especially on this team, because I just don't think they provide enough on offense or defense that this team can't make up for with just their starters playing 4 or 5 more minutes of the game. I think when I'm looking at what the regular season bench lineup can be, I think a lineup of Aaron Gordon at the 4, Zeke Nnaji at the 5, Christian Braun at the 3, Julian Strawther at the 2, and Jamal Murray at the 1. I think that can can be a really solid and interesting lineup. They're going to have enough defensive versatility, rebounding, and spacing. Yes, it is going to be a little cramped with Aaron Gordon and Zeke Nnaji both out there, and Christian Brown, but I think Jamal Murray and Julian Strawther can space out the floor enough to make up for that. And Aaron Gordon might have a little bit of a bounce back year, especially shooting on the corner threes. So I think that's an interesting lineup. But my other major question is, how much do we see Michael Porter Jr. with the bench as the fourth guy or as the stagger guy, where in the past it's been Jamal Murray? But I think Michael Porter Jr. has just improved massively as a rebounder, as a defender. And I think by playing him with the bench, you can kind of play him at the four, especially if they're playing smaller lineups. But you'll just get to see what he can do as a featured guy a little bit more without messing up what the starters are already doing. I think Michael Porter Jr. being able to step into like a larger offensive role without detracting from from Murray and Jokic would be really beneficial for this team, especially in the playoffs, because Michael Porter Jr. had a really good playoffs and then he kind of struggled in the finals without his shot falling. And if he can just kind of improve more when it's attacking off the dribble and self-creation, that's just going to make this team so much more versatile, so much harder to guard, because if you take away the two-man game, they can just dish it out to Michael Porter Jr. He can rise up over anyone, or he can attack off the dribble a little bit. And I think he's shown signs of that. He's shown that he's a lot healthier than he's ever been. He himself has said he's the healthiest he's been since his surgery, which is really important to note. And I just think like a 6'10 guy who's an elite shooter is a really good release valve for a bench unit when they don't have like an elite shot maker or a shot creator, which this team is going to lack. And it will just once again let him spread his wings, get more experience as a featured guy, which I think is going to be really beneficial for this team. I don't think this team is like super concerned with repeating. It seems like Calvin Booth is more looking at this as like a 4 to 8 year type of thing, where we want to win more championships than just this year and next, or I mean, I guess this is next year now, just because of these two. Like they want to win 4 or 5 over the next 8 years, which is very ambitious. But with the way this team is set up and the young guys they have in the pipeline, Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, Christian Brown, Payne Watson, like that's a lot of really solid young talent, and they're probably not all gonna hit, but if a couple of them hit, that really helps this team avoid the tax bill, especially with the second apron now. This is going to be an expensive roster. They already are a very expensive roster, and they probably want to re-sign KCP after his deal is up. So by having so much young talent, especially on rookie contracts, it just makes this team be able to be very cost efficient while keeping their starters well paid, you know. And I think that's important for a team to be able to play very well together when no one's having to worry about their contract, no one has to worry about their money. They can just focus on playing basketball. It just makes it easier for everybody. I don't think this team is like a lock to repeat like other teams in the past, especially like the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Like I think there's teams that can knock them off. When I'm looking at West, I still don't think any team got better than them. I don't think that the Lakers really addressed the problems that they faced last year in the postseason against Denver, where they had to take Anthony Davis off of him. I don't think they have enough size to stop him. I definitely don't think the Suns have enough size to stop him. I don't think the Grizzlies do. Like I just don't think enough teams have enough size to stop Jokic. And while, you know, it's like, oh, we'll make him a scorer, it's like, sure, you can make him a score, and maybe you can if you take away all of his passing lanes, you can beat him. But I think that's a little overblown, because when we look at his big scoring games, I mean, yes, they do lose, but what happens is like another opponent has to match him, and I just don't think there's that many people who can match Jokic on a night-to-night basis. Like Devin Booker had to reach an insane level for the Suns to beat the Nuggets, and even then, that only lasted for 2 games, and Jokic was still able to keep up his level of play for the entire series. And I think when you have a guy who's as good as Jokic is right now, you need teams to build around them build to stop him, and I don't think anyone really did that enough to stop the Nuggets. So they're my favorites to win this year. Looking out East, yeah, I think the Bucks are dangerous, and yeah, I think the Celtics are dangerous, but I still think the Nuggets are the favorite, and I'm just excited for the season to start.